Curtis is back on Arguing Agile, or the Agile podcast. I mean, depending on...
I'm waving at nothing.
Well, there you are. You're at now. I'm on the fence about renaming the podcast. I think Arguing Agile is a much better name for a podcast, but I'm resisting.
Is it because you can say, I'm here at the AA meeting?
I didn't think about that, but now that you mention it.
My name's Brian. I'm a recovering waterfall enthusiast.
Pull that and put that in front of you. I was thinking about you when I was reading this book. I told you earlier, this John Kotter Leading Change book. And I was like, yeah, Curtis is the guy. And then you texted me out of the air. And I was like, oh, I got to finish this book real fast. Because everything in this book applies to discussions that we have had before. I am 100% certain. So he lists an 8-step approach to basically transformation. That's basically what he goes through in the book. He didn't call it Agile transformation because this book was written many, many years ago before Agile was a thing.
If it was easy, you didn't have to write a book on it.
Multiple books, I think. He summarized this book in Harvard Business Review in the 90s, and it still didn't take. People still were like, yeah, I got it. I got this.
That right there is like, well, you just proved my point on how hard change is. Because there's a human element to everything. And everything looks good on paper until you're like, but we're dealing with humans. It's not system. It's not binary of ones and zeros. It's human element where you have 1, 0, a house, a dog, a carrot. I mean, you literally can throw anything into the mix because you don't know what you're going to deal with. You don't know if you're going to be in the middle of a transformation and someone just goes for a power play. You're in the middle of a transformation and someone high up is like, hey, I'm all aboard your transformation, but then they start hiring all their friends. Well, guess what? Now you just have a coup. Yeah, it's the hardest thing to do, but like you said, the sense of urgency, right? Start there. Help me understand that. It's the why. Hey, we know we need to change, and here's why. Is that what it is? And we're stating that to. Oh, there we go.
I'll put it up here so we can look at it. So he says the urgency to transform starts when he points out. He says, okay, normally it starts with a new head of an organization, or maybe like a section of an organization, somebody who's in a leadership position. That's where number one is the new head of the org who has leadership skill and is an outsider because they're new, right? They're considered an outsider. The idea here is outsiders see things more clearly than people in the organization. That's one of the things that comes out real early in the book. He says in order to establish a sense of urgency, you have to sit down and have frank conversations with people inside the organization in order to counteract insider myopia. He spends a lot of time in the book that talking about, I can't remember what it's called, like nice speak or happy speak or something like that, about
like love language style.
Yeah, like oh, I realized we didn't hit our quarterly deliverables or whatever, but look at all the positives that are going on in the organization. Like it kind of sugarcoating failures, because if you're unable to have frank conversations with other people because people are defending their turf, basically, you're never going to get to the problems of the organization and the reasons why you need to change. So you'll never agree that you need to change. You'll never get to that third bullet point. I should have numbered these with numbers. Everyone understands the current situation needs to be changed. Everyone understands the current situation is not tenable for the future. And he gives a number. He's like, you need about 75% of people in actuality to kind of understand that like what we're doing now is not going to be tenable for the future. And
really?
That's about the number.
And you said 75% management because they need to push that, or 75% of management needs to understand that?
They need to be of the understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And one of the things he said, he's like, bottom bullet point, he's like, yeah, sometimes you need to, as leadership, he's, again, most of this book is geared towards leadership. He's like, as leadership or senior management, he's like, sometimes you need to manufacture a crisis, just so people can understand that the urgency is there. So like in the software world, manufacturing a crisis would be like, if we don't work nights and weekends, this deployment won't go out on time or whatever. Or if the ticket, if you don't completely ride the ticket through the ticketing system and call people on the phone when a ticket is sent to their category, we'll be late and we won't make the cutoff to deploy the software. Okay, fine, then we don't make it. I'm intentionally not going to do it so that we don't make it, so that we fail the deployment, whatever deployment target or whatever we're doing, so that I can create that crisis. So he's pointing out, like, maybe as leadership, you should drive towards and create those crises. And the more crises you have, the more the impending sense of urgency and pressure will build on you.
So can I ask a question? Is this similar, like a simile to that would be, you can only stop the little kid from trying to touch the stove before you have to go, well, put your finger on it. And then it's like, okay, I'm done with that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
That would make sense to me. So when you're doing this, and I've seen it before, and again, his steps are something that I guess something that I realized a long time ago, but I went for small company ABC, and I agree. I think it was pointing out, hey, we've got a lot of people that are doing this over the top of each other, and we're helping each other, and it's great that we're helping each other, but it's like Dutch boy with your finger in the dam. I've got a job to do, but I'm putting my fingers in everybody else's holes, and then I'm therefore not doing my job is the level which I could. Yeah. To which, and I will say I'm guilty of this. I said, we've got to stop this because we've got to be able to. We can't, if we do a bunch of things good, we don't do anything great. Yeah. Right. And we need to take a step back and really, if we're continuously covering for other people, we never learn from our mistakes. Yeah. And it's not that we can't cover, because that's a team thing. That's a great thing to do, and it takes a while to get there, but you also have to learn your lesson. So I'm guilty of being like, you can take your hands out, go over there. You need to be the bridge operator. Yeah. And the damn guy will show back up as soon as things go crazy. And once the things went crazy, I've actually seen that employee go, oh, that's my job? and it's crazy because when we talk about change, like, that's a big part of it. I mean, when you do things like where you're throwing a BA in the mix, and then the product owner realizes, oh, wait, I'm ultimately responsible for the stories. But for the most part, they've had this admin assistant that's just been crafting away these stories, and all they do is they look at them and say, yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, that's right. It's like, at some point, like you said, establishing a sense of urgency, you've got to manufacture, quote unquote, that crisis, because we've been covering for so long and we've just been getting by. But I think your earlier point was just getting by is not sustainable. No. And at some point, everybody just starts scaling. There's no, I can't tell me one business that doesn't ever hit to the point of scaling, because once you start scaling is when it exacerbates, and then your whole base just falls out. Yeah. And that's the crisis.
I would say, if I were to ever be a manager in a large organization like what you're describing, where basically your product owners are supplemented by BAs because there's just so much business intake that has to happen, and so many low-level details that have to be vetted out in order for a business story to move through the development team, and not drag your whole development team down for an entire sprint while they discover what are the database tables, what are all the little functions involved in this, where is everything stored, what are the libraries, who's using them, what other teams are using this. Like a BA can really, even though it's not like super vogue in Agile to be like, oh, deploy your BA to figure it all out, they can really be a powerful asset to you as a product person. The trade-off of that is the sense of urgency thing is, as a product person, you still need to have a presence.
Yes.
And you need to reiterate what the valuable pieces of all this is to the team and help them understand why they're valuable. The only reason I bring this up is because what you just mentioned, my business analyst is crafting stories on my behalf. I'm going to come in, I bless the stories, we talk about it, I talk about why, and then they go in, the team picks them up, starts pounding them out or whatever. If there was a break in between when the sprint planning was over, but before my team actually started working on it, like the very tail end of sprint planning, right? Where I bring, for example, my chief product owner, again, assuming I'm scaled at some point.
You say chief?
I bring some kind of person elevated in the product program in. They should be able to understand the stories by the way they're written, what value they're offering, and then just quickly go down the list of everything in the sprint. Because I mean, how many things are in the sprint for one team? It can't be that many. Just quickly go down the list, read the titles. Just by the titles alone, maybe they got to open a story if they really need, but just basically by the titles alone, they should be able to say, okay, scale, I don't know, 1 through 5, 1 through 10, whatever the scale is, arbitrary scale. 1 through 5, 1 through 10. I mean, it could be 1, 2, 3 for all I, right? Small, medium, large. Doesn't matter. What is the value to the business Business, i.e., meaning the customer of the development team turning in that story at the end of the sprint completed. And basically get a neutral party to come in and say, just super quick exercise. Just like in the big room planning of SAFE, where at the beginning of day 2, you have the leadership comes in, the teams have their plan of what they want to do on the board, and leadership comes in and gives them all business value, 1 through 10 business value, and then leadership bounces out. And then the team can kind of switch around based on business value is this over this other stuff we thought was higher priority. This is our chance to change the prioritization, or not. If we think that there's some technical thing involved that they don't know about or whatever, maybe we keep it, but there's a discussion to be had about that. Again, just my career, I have not seen a lot of work centers employ business value as a normal part of their day-to-day operations.
Business value. So how would you define business value? It's not just the cost benefit.
It's not just a cost benefit. It's kind of an arbitrary number, to be honest. It's kind of an arbitrary number that the product person chooses. And the scale doesn't really matter. Again, like the scale that I have chosen to use at my most current company is a 1 through 5 scale. Oh, actually, it's a 0 through 5 scale. It's a 0 through 5 scale. 0 meaning this has no impact on the customer, and 5 meaning the customer will like I kind of think of it as like the Kano model. Where
when you say no impact, can you define that? You mean like there is no value?
The customer will see nothing at all.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure on that.
Yeah. Customer will see no tangible value at all. 0. So like an example of a 0, because people always ask me, like, give me an example of a 0. An example of a 0 is a story that says deploy the software to the test environment, deploy the software to the production environment or whatever. And I'm going to say, well, that's business value 0. Because customer doesn't care how difficult or easy it is for us to deploy software to our environments. Now, if you're rolling out a specific story and you want to give me a specific story and you say that functionality is now in the whatever production environment, that might have value. But just the story of, like, I'm thinking of shops that don't have any kind of CI/CD automatic deployment, right? They'll write a story that says deploy all of this version to the production environment, like 0.
I always look for that, because that's the first part of, like, you're not building a product backlog. You're just essentially managing a task board, and you have a task on something that this is just like a Trello board for you.
Sure, yeah.
Because all you're doing is essentially just saying, this is what I'm doing today. And it's like the product backlog is tangible business values. I don't doubt that it's very valuable that you push something to product. It's very valuable. Yeah. It does nothing for the product itself. Right. Tell me what you pushed, and that's it. I don't need to see where every hour of your day is. Why do I care about that? Are you getting features out the door? If we are, that's all I care about.
This is the nice thing about being on the product side is I pretty specifically do not care. I don't care if it takes you an hour to push stuff out to all the environments or whatever, or if you have to work all day over merge conflicts and deployment failures and rollbacks and all that kind of stuff, and it takes you your full 8.5, 10-hour workday, whatever. Mm-hmm. Like product, I don't. It doesn't matter.
See, I look at it as a scale. So when I was the product owner, I didn't, depending on how long it's been since we last deployed. And I only say this because, like, I worked in a rewards program. Mm-hmm. We'll say in rewards program for this example. If I just push a change out to a reward program, my care about missing a deployment, the length of deployment or a rollback is low, because we're not changing that much in the matter of a week.
Right.
But when you roll out 2.0 of something, my care is way up, because it's been a long time. We've been holding this, and I've been making the decision that we got to hold it. I told the customer we're going to continue to increment, then I'm going to pause, because guess what? I'm going at the next big thing.
Right.
And I'm setting your expectation. I'm calling Bloomberg because I want this out there. I'm calling Business Weekly because it's like, guess what? We're going to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
And then we miss. My interest in caring is a lot more, because I just told people on April 16th, this thing's going out there, but guess what? Now it's April 26th.
Right.
So I would say it's one of the, I forgot what's the curve called, where it's slow and then all of a sudden it just ramps up. It's how long has it been since you've really changed your product? My care goes up a lot if it's been a while. Because then I would say, as a product owner, are you in an organization where you do hold your builds for a long time before you push it out? And I would say, as a product owner, can we do it? Well, no, because it takes so much time to do it every week. And I would say, okay, but incrementally I could push smaller. I could push it every week, but I have to let you have to spend a lot of time doing it. Okay, so if I put it, I could do that. I could deal with that as a product owner, because then if I did mess up, we'll get better at it over time, but that's fine. But it's that part of when you look in there is like, if every release stresses you out because there's a chance that you could roll back, you're probably not pushing very often because you're holding on to a lot of stuff that you just want out there.
I would say you probably need to push more often. And like, again, people will push back on me when I bring up business value 0 because they're like, well, shouldn't it be business value but relative to the consumer or persona named in the story? So, for example, sometimes we will do something that has to do with a software engineer, something to like for example, if we're doing an upgrade to a deployment server, well, the in-house engineer is the consumer of that story because it helps their life or whatever. And I'll say, well, yes, it does, but it has no business value because the end user, it has no value to them that you can deploy easier. But the trade-off to that is when I plan my sprint, I will take a certain amount of tasks in that are like that. Because it's a trade-off. There should be a certain percentage of the team's time that is spent improving our own processes. So in the future, we get faster. And if we decide we're going to take the next sprint or two just to improve our own in-house systems so we don't have to be up in the middle of the night doing pajama parties or whatever and deployments, like my business value might drop to 0 for the whole sprint. Like, let me take that back to the business and explain to the business why our business value delivered is 0 for a couple sprints. Like that's up to me to talk to the business and sell them on, because that's, again, the product's job to relay back to the business. We have to tackle some deep technical tasks. SAFe calls this architectural runway. We have to establish some things so that in the future we'll be able to deploy more easily with less effort and more frequently, so that we can getting business value out doesn't take such a big deal.
That's essentially like what's the laborer's term? You got to spend money to make money.
Right.
So in layman's terms, right? It's the easiest way to do it. We're slowing down now to go faster later.
Most people don't track that at all. I've like, there are very single-digit number of organizations I've been in that actually track that number because it relies on product to be involved.
The business value number.
Yeah.
Have you? So I've done it once, and I never knew where to start. I was like, where do I start? I was like, what's something that I know? What's something that I know that we can relate? I actually, realistically, I just went and took the severity levels that are defined in ITIL 1, 2, 3, and 4, and did it and I actually just slowly like changed a couple words here and there, and we were able to use them. Like, hey, an outage in Sev 1 means that there is at least one or more features that are severely impacted, and then I went to business value 4, which is the higher one, right? You just do the inverse, and I would say business value 4, there are one or more features that are severely enhanced by this feature. You know what I mean? Like, and you could it's a starting point. It's not the best, but it's at least taking the wordsmith, because if you think about bugs and defects, I look at them as the exact inverse, which I know is not probably the right thing to do, it as a product backlog item, in the sense of bug or defect, something is hurting. What's the interest? Oh, it's just a word or something. Product backlog item, high value. There's one or more things that are getting really fine-tuned and it's going to look great, or I just need to change a word. And you know what I mean? So like, you could literally use the inverse on those as just a starting point, and once you start looking at the spectrum of their polar opposites, hopefully it doesn't make you hate them, because I never hate bugs or defects, because those things happen. Do I want to get better and have less? Yeah. But sometimes it helps you out. So that's just where my brain went from that, is you can treat them as opposites, and you find your business value by using what you know, which is most people spend a lot of time defining bugs and defects and severities and priorities. Use the same logic to inversely tie it to your business value.
I'm a big fan of just leaving defects that come in, just leaving them out there on their own and not estimating them and bringing them in. Because it'll sabotage your team's velocity, and it'll sabotage your business value, and everything will take a nosedive. And I'm okay with that. Because then, again, it goes back to the product person that have to explain the reason that we can't push out any business value in the last 2 sprints is because we've been dealing with all these defects. And it prompts the business to ask, like, hey, more technically minded people of the organization, why are we having quality problems? What is the issue here? You know, again, I almost don't want to go down this road because now we're down into my actual realm of expertise. When you talk about a software program having severe quality problems, usually you really need to employ 5 whys to get at the root cause, and it's usually not what you think it would be. You know, it's usually somebody's rushing to get something out, and they're willing to pay that cost of bad quality for speed. They're making a trade-off. That's a tough one to get the team to go along with you on, which is speed to market is more important than a quality solution. That's a tough one.
I don't think it's that hard, but if you relate it right.
It's a tough one for me.
Think about it. How about this? You and I we're Adam Schefter, NFL people.
Okay.
I'll put something out there. I'm not even going to check if it's right as long as I'm first. And then I have to go back later and print a retraction. I'm fine. I'll take that gamble because I was first.
Yeah.
Schefter had the beat. That happens. That's where news is. And I don't necessarily think it's our morals have changed as human beings. I mean, they've had to be able to be okay with that. What's changed is how we consume that stuff, how we want your product. I don't care that your product is not done. I want it now. And we in the organization go, well, okay, I guess if they want it now, then if they don't care about bugs, why should I? I'm just going to spaghetti code it, and then if it just so happens to not have bugs, I'm thumbs up. It's crazy because, and again, chicken and the egg. Was it we wanted to give it to them and we spoiled them and now they expect it? Or have human beings' wants and needs changed over time and we've reacted to them? Which one made that happen, or did they just happen at the same time, right? But, I mean, you could apply that to everything. It's hard to get behind, but realistically, we do it in our everyday lives.
I mean, depending on your level of the organization, it's hard to get behind. Because if you're a startup CEO and you're like 2 more sprints and the money's going to run out if we don't make a sale, like it's not difficult to get behind at all. Whether you can drive that vision out to the team to say, look, I need stuff in production. Like I can't be struggling with deployments, and I'm really sorry that we didn't start with the best of technical agility, where basically the good DevOps fundamentals or whatever. I'm sorry we didn't start that way, but we got to either find a way to quickly get that way while also pursuing the features that we need, or we got to ignore all that stuff. Yes, it's hard to deploy. Yes, it's hard to maintain, but we got to keep pushing forward. Otherwise, like, I'm going to have to cut half the development team.
Yeah, look left and right. You guys, like, I don't want to say it, but we don't get this sale out there. If you look left and right, that person may not be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I hate it saying it, and we're all in the same boat. One, that's less money in my pocket. You may not know much, and I'm saying it from the CEO's perspective. You may not know much about me. You probably assume that I love money. Well, guess what? That's less in my pocket. So I'll play into your hand because I actually do care about you all. That's why I'm coming here. I need to make this sale. And to make this sale, I need you. So we'll probably work a little bit longer. But guess what? Here's what I'm willing to do. You know, if it's, I need less hectic, crazy times at work, okay, we'll make it happen. You all tell me. You want pizza parties at night? We'll do that. You want to come into work, you'd rather come into work starting at 10 and then you can leave at 6 because you'd rather be loose. I mean, what do we need? And that's when the CEOs, they get it done, and then no willingness to barter with listening to the people part. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking people to work weekends.
Right.
What's wrong is that it's never hey, I need you to work this weekend, but I'm willing to work with you. What can I do to offset this to you? That's the human element of that, and that's the whole thing we're talking about here is change. You got to do it. That's a change in the way you look at your people. Are they machines to you, or are they people? Yeah. You ask people for favors all the time. You never have a problem. And you're like, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. But some CEOs just don't do that. Some executives, you use the term executives, just don't think that way.
Well, this goes back to the longest tangent to get us back to the point we were talking about, the sense of urgency. Is like, if I have to stop and deploy something, because I promised something and I got to keep my people late on Friday or ask them to work Saturday morning or whatever, because that's the sense of urgency coming back in. But I'm also, I was at a shop one time where they'd ask you to work Saturday, the IT staff specifically, and I'm like, not just IT, like development, deploying stuff, and doing pajama parties was like a normal thing. But it wasn't a normal thing for IT. Normally what IT would do is, if they had to be up to, I don't know, kind of watch the systems or monitor performance or whatever while the developers were working on the system, IT for a long time had this comp policy where if they had to stay up until 2 a.m. Saturday night, then they would push their weekend and they'd come in after lunch on Monday or whatever. And then I remember when that particular company got bought out, all that stuff went away, and they're like, oh, it's just a normal part of IT's job to have to do weekend deployments. So it was just expected. Yeah, I know.
It's just a normal thing to not.
They're like, we expect you to be back in at whatever 8:30, whatever 9 o'clock on Monday morning, even though you're up 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, Friday night leading into Saturday. So you had like one 26-hour day.
Jesus.
I remember the deployments would go until like 6 and 7 a.m. because these deployments had to do with like big database re-indexes and stuff like that. And the re-index would run like 6 hours. You know, the hours they would run.
And they wouldn't be able to do it well ahead of time to line it up.
No, you couldn't, because this is, they probably could have, but the company would have had to pay for database replication. The company was unwilling to sink money into database replication technology.
I like how you say sink money, because at least last time I worked with it, I think it was a company that makes what I think was Golden Gate is the one that I'm thinking about, but they hadn't quite figured out. And this was 2017, and they were like, it took them they were like, our cost is going to be a person's salary and the technology. And I'm like, it's not that simple. That's when they were trying to explain it to me, and back in the day, I used to be a systems guy.
Yeah.
It was crazy for me. And I was like, you have to be a brilliant guy to be able to get this to work, because even at a large scale like finance or retail, with the number of transactions and data that comes through, good luck.
Yeah.
Especially on something like that.
Yeah. The things he lists as, sorry, I'll put it up here.
Yeah, put it up here.
The things he lists as sabotaging the sense of urgency is management that lacks patience, unwillingness to drive people out of their comfort zone. This is like managers, managers, not leaders, seeking to minimize risk. I mean, that's what managers do. Managers minimize risk. That's just what they do as part of their job. People that are so ingrained with the current system, they can't help but keep the current system operating as is. Like, these are all things that will sabotage, trying to create a sense of urgency. Like, oh, you're just trying to rabble-rouse, but this is the way it's always been done here, so we're gonna keep on keeping on.
Yeah. That's a tough one for me, because I've seen that before. I've seen it as like, look, he's been with us since the beginning. I was like, and you told me you have a new vision, and if he's not getting behind your new vision, then we've got a problem. You got a serious problem. Like, you took a risk by making this company, so don't tell me you're not willing to take a risk. Mm-hmm. You took a big risk making the company. Now you're doing a big risk by saying we need to change because it's not sustainable. But you're also telling me we have to be very careful with that change, and we can't change too much because we don't want to upset people. It's like, look, they came here because of you. If it's not going to be me that gets them through it. They need you, because they got behind you once before, and they're going to get behind you again. And it's the fact that you can't get behind them and push them. Mm-hmm. You have to lead them. You have to show them, guys, we have to make this change, and let me show you why. Because as we go to the cloud world, our on-prem stuff is going to absolutely just engulf our costs. Right. And I can't do it. And I can't even pay for y'all anymore. And I want to do this because we've been here since there was a two-man shop. Yeah. Now we've got 100 people. We got to change, and some of it's going to hurt, but it's going to feel comfortable after a couple months. Yeah. You have to trust me. You trust me back then, please trust me now. Yeah. And if there's anything I can do, come to me. My door is open. That is a leader. That is the difference between a manager, and that's how you.
Well, that's what unwillingness to drive people out. That's exactly what you're describing. Unwillingness to drive. Well, I got this manager, and he's kind of important, or I don't want to make him mad, and I don't know if I want to get in a fight, or like the other thing that we encounter is people that have they just don't want to get in more fights. Like, you know what I mean? They know
they're
that
a conflict avoider.
Yeah, they know that what they're going to bring up is going to cause a fight. Like even Scrum Masters deal with that on a regular basis. Like, oh, I got to talk to this person. Oh, I know it's going to turn into a fight. Oh, this and that, and then put it off. But not only do you got to get through that, but you've got to come out on the other side with that person as an ally. You know what I mean? Understanding why they don't think that this is important.
So, I was at a company here in town, and I remember being in a shouting match with an employee, and I was assuming the role of PO. Should I shout at an employee? No, but he was very strong about something, and we weren't shouting at each other. We were shouting about something. Okay. And I remember, and we were talking about something, and I remember slamming the paper. I was like, because the user doesn't want to do that. Yeah. And I got mad, and he's like, why? And we did it, and he was like, oh, I need coffee. And I was like, fine, go. And I went in the other room, and someone comes up and goes, Curtis, you gonna fire him? And I said, no. And I got my stuff. I mean, I was like, I got to get out of this office because I was like, I don't want to have another shouting match. And I'm walking out, and then they go, why wouldn't you fire him? I said, because he cares. And I came in the next day, I was level head, and I said, guys, let's huddle up. What you saw between us wasn't necessarily healthy, but I also tell you, it's not. There's things we could have done. He's challenged me because he cares. He wants to know. Right. He left because he wanted to get his head there. I left because I wanted to get my head there as well. Mm-hmm. It's the same exact thing. It's that environment. It's if you just sit there and be an order taker. Trying is something you can work with. Writing the line and just doing enough is probably not something there. And that's just. I mean, it's a willingness to change, but I mean, caring goes a long way too.
Yeah. So his first big step is establishing a sense of urgency. Like if you can't do that, you're not going to get anything off the ground. The second thing he says to do is to create a guiding coalition. So again, we're going back to the concept of like an agile transformation. Mm-hmm. You're creating a guiding coalition. So he says, well, at first, it's probably 3 to 5 people in the first year if you're a small company, or some of these are senior people, some of these are like strategically chosen managers in the organization, or maybe they're like a director of development or like a supervisor or key developers, something like that. Maybe that's a person, or managers or whatever. But he's like, at large companies, this really needs to ramp up to somewhere between 20 and 50 people after a year. I kind of cut it out of here before this can kind of take root. And he's like, it should be a good cross-section of people. It could even include people that are outside of your company that have a stake in your company transforming. So it could be board members, it could be a particular key customer or key customers, I guess. But the core of it is going to be your upper-level managers in the organization that really need to be behind the change for a bunch of different reasons. And his failure to establish a coalition is, I feel like the failure to establish a coalition is like what people deal with in washed out agile transformations all the time. People that try to say like, oh, we're going to be agile now, or we're going to transform, we're going to use Scrum, and they either underestimate the difficulty in getting enough people together to change. And this is like what we talked about before, I think maybe before the podcast. When you undertake a agile transformation, you're not just talking about transforming your department that's delivering software. You're talking about wrapping your arms around the whole company. I'm talking about changing the way that products are financed, changing the way that teams are financed, changing the way that your performance reviews are done, changing the way promotions are decided, all right? Because like we'll get to this. I don't know when we're going to get to this. We might not even get to this in this podcast, quite honestly. It's down here, I think.
We can get there. We can do it.
It's down here at number 5. It's like, if you're not willing to, like for example, moving from a centrally controlled, top-down hierarchical structure to a distributed, moving to a I tell you what to do type of environment, and moving from that to a what do you need to accomplish a mission, where I'm the manager and I'm asking you what do you need, rather than I'm the manager telling you go do this. Like, that's the change that we're talking about here. And what he's saying is, if you don't understand the difficulty in moving like that, you've underestimated the the challenge here. And because you've underestimated the challenge, it's going to be hard when you get down the road, and you're going to back off, and you're going to fail. Basically, your transformation is going to fail. And then I like his other points, which is, it doesn't come through clearly because I flatten the language, but I believe in the book he says something along the lines of, your leadership team doesn't know how to work collaboratively.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, they know how to carve out a little niche and a little a silo for their little leadership organization where they're at the head of their little fiefdom, and they can push off anyone else, and they know how to do that. But they don't know how to, once they're on the leadership team, like the little Kanban team that is the leadership team at the top of the organization, they don't know how to work with the other team members. I don't know why. I don't know. They all have careers up until this point. I would expect they had learned collaboration at some point, but I guess that's my mess up for assuming that collaboration is an assumed competency. I guess that's my mistake. To think that people at higher positions in the organization have a equally scaled level of collaboration skill.
Do you believe, and it's because we're dealing with the human element, that last one says teamwork at the top is not a capability?
Yes.
Two executives clearly just don't see eye to eye, and from a personality wise, they're going to clash until the day is blue.
Right.
So
that's this. That's it.
Do you at that point you're going to come in there and help them with change? Are you saying, guys, either you got to find a way to work together, or we got to start figuring out what's going to happen here? Because when you all are not on the same page, this is not going to work. And if they can't, and then what do you do? Because then you're talking about setting yourself back. Because I mean, you're talking at the top. Onboarding a new CFO would take months.
Well,
or CTO.
You're 100% right with that. Here, I'll cut to the camera. I very barely ever use.
There you go.
You're 100% right with that. You now have a blocker that only leadership can solve. And again, we get back to the real job of the Scrum Master. This is a blocker. Your CFO is resisting changing from project-based once-a-year budgeting to
product-based.
Product-based.
So you're saying go from project to product, and then
that's an example of one blocker. Another example of a blocker would be my single HR person in the organization only works for the executives. They represent the executives and make sure that the executives are taken care of, and make sure that the organization is not going to get hit with lawsuits or whatever, and walk people out when they've lost their stapler or whatever, right? The individual teams don't have an HR rep that works with them to help them post their jobs and to understand how to interview, what questions are appropriate, what's not, how to vet candidates, how not, to pass skills along that are HR specific skills that maybe people who are software developers all their career, they've never learned how to interview somebody. And now I need an HR person to come onto my teams to spread that skill set around, just like I would need a business analyst, or if my teams have to work with a database they never worked with before, a database expert for a little bit of time. I need the HR model now, not to completely serve the executives. I need the HR model to also serve my teams that maintain products. So that's a blocker. Okay, my teams have no way to get this HR skill. So I need to help the organization understand and to change the HR role so it further enables the rest of the organization. I can't remember why we were talking about this. We were talking about this because teamwork. Teamwork. But in a traditional organization, the HR executive, if there is an HR executive, they're not just randomly rolled under finance. Would be like, there's no money in that. Yeah. I'm not doing that. It's going to come out of my budget. I'm not doing that. Figure it out.
It's crazy because you in the startup world, you can have that happen. It's crazy because you can do that and you can be so focused. You've been go, 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 that when you actually scale, you get the time to sit back in a seat, the honeymoon phase is over, and you don't even like the person you're sitting across from. Mm-hmm. You haven't interacted with them that much. But when you all become C-levels, you realize, crap, we can't work together. Yeah. Then you have a big problem because that can't happen. Because even if you try to make it work, and if you can professionally make it work, all for you. But I can tell you right now that it's going to leak and people are going to see it. And at some point it's going to come to a head, especially when you both have person A has a bad day, person B has a good day. It can work. Both people have good days. Gosh, they're best friends today. But the day that they come in that they're both having bad days, it's gonna get out there, and then it's never gonna leave because it's just gonna be that thing. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's you don't really get it in the massive organizations, but that's also because I've really never seen a big, large scale organization actually not do a bottom up transformation. I've never really seen them do a top down transformation. I've never seen it. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
The other thing here is opposition will stop the change at this stage if the coalition does not make progress. Because people's identities and or their jobs might be at risk. Like what you were saying is like these people just don't get along, and they're starting to realize they don't get along. But basically, the change agent in the organization, the people directly, not reporting to, but the people most beholden to the guiding coalition of the transformation, leading the transformation, they may be working for managers that don't support it. They may be working for whatever project managers or people who have really no role in the future in a completely agile organization. Yeah, again, if they don't transform, right? If they just want to stay the same, they'll have no role. So it's in their best interest for the effort to fail, because then they can keep being a project manager forever. They don't have to learn new skills. They don't have to get put on the spot. They don't have to do anything. If the transformation fails, they get to keep doing what they're doing. And what they're doing, I'm like, how many years do you have to do what you're doing before it's like ingrained in stone? And it's tied to your personality, which is then tied to your self-worth, right? Like you and I might think of it as like, well, it's a job. You go to your job. You know what I mean? I don't know. That should have been a question. Like, some people, I'll phrase it this way. Some people think it's a job. You go to it. You go home at the end of the day, and you are separate from your job. Other people are not that way. They cannot help but their identity is their job. Wins, losses, whatever at their job deeply affects them and cuts deep into their psyche. I
don't want to say I'm in the middle, because it doesn't really make any sense. But I'm in the spot where my job is not my identity, but my morals are. And when my job questions who I am as a person, moral-wise, then I come to an impasse with myself. I'm in that, so look, it's not who I am, because the job is not who I am, but if the job is questioning my morals, same thing goes with any type of social circle. If I'm associating with my nefarious characters, my morals are coming, you know what I mean? So
I like to say principles because they translate more easily, but it's the same thing.
All right, what's number 3?
His number 3 was you have to develop a vision and a strategy. Now he didn't say a ton about the strategy from that vision, right? Because we all know that like the strategy and vision is there's a strategic aspect and a tactical aspect that follows it. Mainly in the book, he rails on vision because he's talking about with the vision, you can bring it to your guiding coalition that you've assembled, your cross section of stakeholders. That's what we would call it. It's a cross section of stakeholders in the organization. You can bring your vision to the stakeholders, and you can collaboratively talk with them to say, hey, this is my vision, what do you think? And you can work together to build a vision. Now, company vision, product vision, like there's a bunch of different visions, like, and this works at different levels of the organization, right? So a vision that's built with your team members should be stronger than anything you've done yourself individually. And he does say, he's like, oh, this completely can be started by one person can write a draft of the vision and bring it to the group, and the group can beat it up and revise it and talk about it and whatever. Over time, it'll morph, but he's like, it's perfectly okay for one person to be like, this is what our vision should be. But the idea is the vision is something that is specific. It's something that within 5 minutes, honestly, it should be like less than 5 minutes, but within 5 minutes, you easily can communicate that vision to pretty much anyone who interfaces with your business. Customers, stockholders, employees, stakeholders, we'll call them stakeholders. pretty much any stakeholder, you should be able to communicate what that vision is, and they should understand it pretty easily. And then he points out, without a vision, he's like, your transformation basically dissolves into a directionless, desperate grouping of projects. That like, this department's trying this, and this department's trying this, and this department's trying whatever, and they don't really work together, or maybe at worst they're incompatible or they're conflicting. And this is also the category, the vision category, is when he brings up people saying, oh, we tried that. We tried to use Scrum with our teams, and we tried that a couple years ago, and it doesn't work here, right? Again, because it goes back to what I said, is like you're directionless. You don't have an idea of where you're going. So without that, everyone's trying different things, and of course it's failing, and you're not learning. Like, it's failing, and you're not learning from those failures and changing your strategy. And also he points out here, I think I cut it out of my notes. He points out here is like, managers, they're not really the people to create a vision, to craft a vision, because they really have no.
It's number 3. Yeah. They're so focused on 3, which is short term.
Yeah, a vision is not the next couple weeks type of, or even months. It could be. That's not where the vision is. The vision is over the next several years. Where is our company going? And dude, honestly, managers, they're not the people. They're not the people to maybe they could throw that. Maybe some of them have vision. Maybe some of them happen to have leadership ability. But I don't know. The broad generalization here is that managers are not those people.
I find that if you ask someone, hey, if you were to make a vision here, like, what would it be? For a manager to respond back to you, you would probably get something along the lines of, that's how I'm used to that. That's how most people they need that to talk to me. When you ask them about that, the first thing they start doing is short-term deliverables, and it has nothing to do with a strategy. It's strictly project outcomes. Hey, what's my vision? Well, I mean, in a month, we're going to be able to do that self thing. The user's going to be able to do that. And then in 2 months, we're going to kick off this. And it's like, no, I need your vision. What's the strategy? What exactly is the tangible outcomes that you're hoping as a group, right? You're still thinking project.
Yeah.
What's the big term in the roadmap? I mean, are you... Yeah. You're so focused on output, you don't care about your outcome.
Yeah.
What's your outcome?
Yeah, vision is not a plan. Vision is not a plan. Vision is where we're going. And this is a great thing about being in product. Again,
that's where you're at right now, right?
Yeah. Being
nice.
Product management is like, I'm directly involved in crafting the product vision, especially the smaller the company. The smaller the company, the more ability, the more opportunity you have to influencing that product vision. To say, hey, this is what I see we're doing. This is what seems to be the vision. This is what I think. This is where I think we could go. So this is an opportunity. Like, let me write up for you what I think the vision could be, and then we will work together. Again, collaboratively, we'll collaborate to talk about this is what maybe the vision for the future could be. And you have access in a small company to everyone you need to craft that vision. You have access to all the department heads. You basically could talk to anyone. I mean, you literally could talk to everyone in the company if you wanted to and shop around the vision. As long as you're willing to have holes poked in your ideas. And you're okay with that. But like, again, this is why I'm in product, because I'm like, I want people to challenge what my ideas are, because I've always had a strong vision of the future given the details and the environment that I see, but I also realize I'm not exposed to everything. So I feel that the most powerful product people can craft that vision, but also can be open to being challenged. And if they can't defend the vision, given what they see, then that's the drive for them to go get more detail, to go learn more things.
Okay, I can get behind that.
That's when you talk about empiricism and Scrum and stuff like that. Like, that is the difficult. Like, I worked a good portion of my career without ever encountering this type of, like, what I'm encountering now in my career, which is like, I think that this is the direction we should go, and then I go seek out dissenting opinions. Why don't you think that this is the way to go. And then I see what evidence they have, and I try to pick apart my own idea.
Well, the anti-opinion, I just shared something not the other day, but like the opposite opinion, you don't learn really anything from your friends, but you can learn more from your enemies. Yeah. And it's not necessarily that the opposite opinion is your enemy, but it's the opposite opinion. I want you to tell me everything that is the not clause right here. I have a vision.
Yeah. Well, it's on this list, where's number 6? The leader is ideas, and the manager here is facts.
Yeah.
Like the manager is unprepared, unwilling to deal in ideas. Like if you can't back something up, don't bring it to me. I don't want to talk about it. The leader is here's an assumption I have. I don't have any facts yet. Right? So like I think the product would fit in this market.
Mm-hmm.
Based on my hunch, which is this or whatever. Let's talk about how we either prove it or disprove it or whatever. And then you get into a whole world of like, should our ideas be negative based or should they be positive based? Like, should I come up with a negative hypothesis? Like, I bet that our products would not fly in this market. And then we try to disprove that by finding people, doing surveys, asking people to check our product or whatever. Or should it be the opposite way? Hey, I think that this is the perfect market for us. And then we try to disprove it. You know what I mean? Either or. But they're different ways because the manager, the manager can't even fly in that. Like the manager needs to be, I guess, kind of coached in that direction to be able to operate in that. Whereas the leader here is coming up with the ideas.
Well, where this comes down, and maybe it's part of the changes, and this is just where my head naturally goes, is everything. And
save this so I can
for anybody on the podcast that can't see this is...
I'll save it so I can show it when we're doing it.
What we're looking at is leadership, which is the light blue, and the managerial is... Think about when you say those things, right in the middle, I'd love to show what the effect that having those traits does on people. Because the manager side, if you didn't even put manager up there, that'd be someone that you would assume is like a data-driven or analytics person.
Sure.
They only are in the concrete, hard facts.
Sure.
The leader is you would say, happy path or the blue ocean person.
Sure.
They're not looking at something for what it is.
Sure.
They take it for a grain of salt and they want to expand on the horizon. I would consider them to be the optimist versus the realist. I wouldn't consider them pessimistic per se, but they're definitely someone who's really concerned in, I have this and I know this, and this is the procedure, the facts, tactical. Military is much like that. You don't blue ocean anything in the military. You're tactical about everything. It's because of data. But I again go back to a change is, for me, the people is the hardest part in it, and what do these things do for people? Mm-hmm. Short term, it gets them through their day, but what's the short term plan? What's the analogy I'm thinking of? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Mm-hmm. Right? You can fish for a man, and you have to fish for him every day, or you teach a man to fish, and he can catch fish for his lifetime, right? So, same thing. Control versus persuading. What does that do to people? Yeah. You always give them the answers instead of giving them the questions. Same thing that I was talking about you want to catch fish for someone every day, or do you want to teach them how to fish so they can do it themselves?
Well, just looking at this list for a second, you would figure, like, you need... This isn't on the list, which makes me like the topic even better, but which one of these do you need? Maybe that's a organizationally, that's like a contextual question, because depending on the state of your organization, you may need more of one of these than the other. If you've got a huge mega corporation, giant organization, you probably need more of on the right. You need more people who can execute on the ideas.
Can I caveat? I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah.
Here we go. Do you need it? No. Are they more generally accepted by the public? Yes. The outliers are the blue. They're kind of considered the weirdos. Mm-hmm. They're kind of the people that are like, oh God, this guy again. The people on the right are the ones that's the guy I want in front of my CFO.
Yeah.
And it's I would go back to the root cause of fear there, but that's where I'm challenging you is like, You would see them more. Do you want them more? Nah, I don't know. If you're leading a change, I wouldn't. I want them to get used to blue.
I would say that you just hit on something I brought up earlier, which is the CFO, the finance people, HR people as well. They're in the right category. They're in the category on the right.
Oh yeah, data.
And mostly it's not a dig on them. It's not a dig on them because like that's what their career field tells them. Like, oh, in order to fire somebody, you've got to have the facts. You know what I mean? You've got to have the answers. You've got to be in control of how you do the firing. You got to know details just in case anything comes up later or whatever. Like on the left, it's like if you realize that someone is not on board with your goals, someone's not committed to your long-term strategy or whatever, you can't see them at the company 2 years from now. It has nothing to do with facts. It just has to do with the feeling of, is this the person?
Yeah.
2 years from now when my company is bigger and we're in different markets and the stresses are deeper or whatever, is this the person that I want with me by my side? Well, what you said earlier is like, on a good day, we're getting along. When it's one of our good days, we can kind of manage. When we're both on a bad day, we just better not see each other.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
It's not going to work. It's like, I can make the decision based on that first category of like, this person doesn't believe in most of the ideas that I have as a leader in the organization. I know it's not going to work. So I can have an adult conversation and be like, look, this is not the place for you in the future. It's not going to work out in the future. That's the end. Like, as an ideas person, again, now I'm so generalized. I need to cut back to in my brain. I'm thinking of like the founder of a company, right? Maybe not even the CEO. One of the founders of a company. Again, the people that are like making that cost benefit of like, if I don't deliver something in 3 sprints, I'm gonna have to cut some developers because I won't be able to pay anyone anymore. Somebody under those kind of stresses.
Yeah.
They're probably in the first category. Again, unless they were brought on specifically for their ability to execute. HR, finance, those type of positions. Maybe you can even say some developers probably are brought on for their ability to execute.
Oh yeah.
You know. Yeah.
And why do we get into that is because we're seeing them as hands-on keyboard. When you start talking about hands-on keyboard and that's what you're focused on, yeah. For the record, I would say, because we're going to show this graphic, right?
Oh yeah.
I would say I find both sides, and I think the strive for change in an organization is if you find yourself all the one side or all the other. Because like, I mean, imagine if you're a corporate lawyer. I mean, do you really need a leader? No, I'm sorry, but if you go to a court with feelings, you're going to get eaten up.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't come with that, I mean, and they have to. So there's definitely a place. The issue is during a change, if you find people that are in the manager side, you're going to want them to, during the course of the change, go down and say, I still like 1. I'm sorry. I'm getting better at 2. All right, 3, you got me. Let's cross that out. We're gonna bring over the other 3, and then you get this mismatched, and you're like, look, I'm not fully different. I'm making strides, and you're starting to okay. You're completely right here. I'm always obsessive with number 11, which is things. No, you're right. I do care about the people. I just didn't think of it that way. So you're right. Decisions now. The first thing is this decision that I'm going to make. If I'm going to ask for that another status report. Do they really have the time to do it? No, they don't. And I don't really need it anyway. I can convey this in a much better way, or I'll just do it myself. You're right. So that's the types of things. It's not saying that if you're 1, you're 1 through 22. It's basically saying that I think in the course of a change, you have to be able to go down this list and cross out a couple of your things. You're like, look, I used to be obsessed with this. Yeah. It's just not me anymore. Or if I'm going to go with this company and this is my list, I got to make a decision on if this changes for me. So I think that goes down to the vision and strategy, because if you don't have vision and strategy, how can you make your list? Yeah, because I don't think you can. Yeah. If you were to come to me as the head of product and I'm like, I can't get on. I mean, Steve Jobs was the best one about it. What's the one with Ashton Kutcher when he goes, you don't have fonts? He goes, if you can't get on board with the vision of this company, you're gone. And he goes, what? He goes, no, you're gone. You're out. You're fired. And he just fires him. And his friend comes up and goes, you just fired our most senior dev. And he goes, and he doesn't share the vision of this company, which is not the right way to handle it. No. But He made a decision about somebody who was a brilliant mind that had no shared vision for the company. Not the right way to handle it at all.
Yeah.
Probably could have helped the person rather than lose them. But I get the point they were trying to make. And it's the same thing here that we see here is that vision right there. I mean, you're going to put it out there, and you do want to have a discussion. It shouldn't just be my vision of the highway. But at the same point, everybody's got to know if that's something they get behind.
That's his entire point number 4. His entire chapter in the book is about communicating the change vision. I left out of the notes here where he says, like, it's not fair to employees that are being left out to not tell them. What you just said is, like, if you can't get on board with the vision, like, this is how we're going to be fair about phasing you out, or early retirement, like that kind of stuff. Like, we'll be fair about it, but here's how we will handle it should that case arise. That's part of the vision. So you shouldn't try to hide that. You should be clear about it, but you should be equitable. You should be fair to your employees. But the thing about communicating the vision was, he's like, you can't just, there's a lot of text here, we don't have to read any of it. He's like, you can't just, your CEO can't just hop on a Zoom call and tell the company one time, like, this is a vision or whatever, and like that's the end of it. He's like,
I thought that's how corporate.
That's not.
We care about you all now. Okay, gotta get back to work.
That's not accurate. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's inadequate. It's not enough. He's like, the other thing is that the head of the company goes to different departments and he parrots the same speech over and over again. He's like, that's not enough either. Or you put your correspondence out into email or whatever. You send it out every couple months, or
My favorite one is,
put it in your.
Where's the doorway to the office? Oh, it's right over there. All right, we're gonna put it on the wall right next to it.
Yeah,
that way,
yeah.
And it's a good thought, and it really is.
He says that in the book too. Yeah.
It's I like the idea of it, but if that's as far as it goes, then you can throw it out the window.
Yeah.
I like it as long as it's lived.
Yeah.
If that's up there for, I don't know, the visual aesthetics, and it's just something of blowing smoke, then that's not the right thing.
It's not good enough.
No.
What he says is that the executives, and again, he says executives meaning all the senior management, every time they have a discussion, every time they go to a meeting talking about product, for example, in their everyday activity, they have to find a way to talk about what they're doing and how it ties back to the vision. They have to constantly be tying back all their conversations to the vision, and the whole leadership has to do that. This layers the best for what we deal with, because I think about a product owner creating and crafting a product vision that ties into the company vision. They should be able to accept and deny features that are talked about by how they fit into the larger company vision, and say, hey, that doesn't get us towards whatever. The product person is the number one person, kind of in my how I'm thinking of it, to be like the main person to intercept this kind of stuff and drive it forward.
Yeah.
I don't know how that scales. I don't know how that scales in a larger organization.
I think it scales well. The issue, I think, again, with large organization is the top that you have put up there, is that oftentimes, like, okay, hey, we're in a 3-year rebranding pitch, and here's our new vision for the next 3 years, and it gets said once, and then that's where it goes.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that.
Worse is one of the items that he has here, which is like, they give it in speeches, they put it out in their correspondence or whatever, the written correspondence, but then you see certain senior members of leadership just like trampling all over, like we use Scrum, but then certain senior members of leadership are like, you've got to have this feature out by. Stop what you're doing. Drop everything you're doing and put this feature out.
Yeah. And then that's where it goes down to of, if you're truly top-down changes, then guess what? Let's do this. I understand there's some resistance to change here. I'm the CTO, and I'm telling you all. What? If you ever come into contact with something that you think doesn't fly by what I'm saying here today, my number will be on the bottom of the screen. Mm-hmm. Put it down here. I'm going to do this because I'm on video with you all now. That's the number you call.
Yeah.
And I can't say I'll always have my phone on, but I will call you back because I want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm telling you that we're going towards agility, and I understand, and I believe I understand what it is, and you're showing me specific principles, we've got to correct that behavior. Yeah. There is nobody, and it starts with me. I'm changing. We're all going to change. But we all have to change together.
Yeah.
That's when it comes down to, is like, are you leading in the day-to-day? Well, I can't see what your day-to-day is.
Yeah.
But if you're telling me that you've got my back and I'm seeing something that doesn't fly by what you're saying is we're here to do this, this, and this, I'll take that. I'll write that number down. And then the first time and it's a very daunting task because I've been in that situation where I'm like, do I really call? Do I not really call? But I make one call and it's like, hey, I'm concerned. Okay, I want to hear it. Let's hear it. And if you don't want to say who, then that's fine. You can just tell me where you kind of work, and there we go. Yeah. I think it's great. There's a billion different ways you can do that, but when you're saying it, executives incorporate vision and messages in their hour-by-hour activities. Yeah. Put myself in the developer's shoes here. I'm not going to see it, but I got to know that you got my back if I'm going to sit there and call someone out on that, because there are times when they'll say it, and then you have nowhere to go when you're like, this just doesn't feel like what you've told me that we're doing this year. And I'm lost because I'm grasping at somebody's hand that's not even there. Like, I need a hand. Pull me up out of this mess.
Well, this is one of his things in the book. The quickest way to sabotage, like, a good communication about the vision is to not, basically to talk the talk, but not walk the walk. Mm-hmm. So your actions are completely divorced from what you're communicating. And that's the quickest way to sabotage this whole category, is that if you're like, oh, just call me anytime that there's a problem or whatever, and then either you're not available or you're like, anytime someone does call you, they get in trouble for calling you, and you know what I mean, or to raise it, like, anytime anyone can say there's a problem and stop the assembly line, but when you do pull the cord and stop the assembly line, you just get yelled at by every single department head on that assembly line because you're causing a problem. So basically you learn, I'm just never going to pull the cord and stop the line again.
Exactly.
Like, I'll just let the garbage keep going, and at least I won't get yelled at. You can't fault the individual worker in that environment for letting bad quality continue because they got burned one time. Like, one time's all it takes, potentially.
What you hit the nail on the head is what you see most of the time. You've seen something happen in an organization, and here's what happens. One bad thing happens, i.e. non-prod email gets sent out in production, right? Right. And this is minor. It's an email, for God's sake. Yeah. Guess what happens? Now we put all this stuff in here. Right. We've now had to spend 300 man hours because we've blocked this communication here. And every time before an email is sent out, it's reviewed by every individual person. And you just essentially made this extravagant process to have something from happening, when in reality the thing is, hey, what happened? I didn't even check on the APIs. Okay, well, like, I know you don't want it to happen again, but unless your system is completely unusable, there are a lot of outcomes that happen out of there. Sure. Where extravagant processes get layered on top. And then if we want to go back to the root of Agile, how lean is that? Mm-hmm. You've just elongated your time to market or ability to deliver because you are afraid of something happening, rather than just sitting down with a person that made the mistake and then they go, I just messed up. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Next, you get one. The next time, I don't want to have to put another process in place here. I think at this point we just all know, and we just circulate it. Yeah. But you've seen it, and of course those layers of processes never come from the people doing the work. Why not just say, how can we just make it so that emails just don't go to prod? Yeah. And then can you all just tell me how you want to do it? Yeah. Because I bet it wouldn't be the strangled mess of stuff that I'm going to put in there. Yeah. And I'm trying to tie that back into where we were just at with vision.
It's back to the vision, but I would also argue in that example, again, like divorcing Scrum Masters out of the equation. Your Scrum Masters, first of all, I'm trying not to turn this into a servant leader discussion
debate
/ debate
politics.
There are two dimensions that I want to go down, which is, number one, your product person should be the first person, because you're dealing with customers, stakeholders. I'm going back to stakeholders. You're dealing with end users, aka stakeholders at that point. So your product person should be all over any kind of issue that's happening with stakeholders, all over them, like white on rice on a paper plate in a snowstorm, all over your users. Hey, we sent you a thing, it was incorrect, my bad, I'm me, we communicate on a normal basis because I'm the product person and you're the stakeholder. And that should be the first line of defense. Yeah. Second line of defense is a Scrum Master. To organizationally make sure we say, well, how can we make sure this doesn't happen? You know what I mean? To assure everybody this is taken care of. Everybody, I mean everybody. So assuming the person that was communicated to in this instance was, maybe they were higher up in the organization, maybe they're a customer, maybe certain people have been out of shape, kind of getting everyone together and leading that. This is what happened. We know what happened. This is what we're going to do in the future. These are the controls that are in place. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Again, to tie it back to the vision, that's where we're going with this. To tie it back to the vision, what is the vision in that example? Is the vision to be in production as frequently as possible? If that is the vision, to be in production as frequently as possible, I almost want to say you're going to have mistakes that happen under the banner of being in production as frequently as possible. But I also want to say you cannot harshly punish people for mistakes, because the fact that somebody made a mistake,
For honest mistakes.
honest mistake, yeah, you're right. The fact that somebody made an honest mistake now means that they have the opportunity to learn and potentially, that's my star on this conversation, will never make that same mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, if you're down the road of like, oh, I'm going to fire that person because they sent some test email to a production user and I'm going to fire that person. Like, well, now, congratulations, you can never learn from that mistake because you got rid of that person. That person that earned that learning on your behalf, on your dime, basically, on your payroll, they earned that learning, and now you got rid of that person. Now you basically erased your ability to learn from the mistake.
Imagine you go through your front room and it's dark and you stub your toe on the coffee table. Imagine if your reaction or solution to that problem is to throw the coffee table out the window. You see what I mean? How about we don't stub our toe on the coffee table anymore? Anger and panic is not solving anything there. And in interlaying processes there is not going to help anything. Dude, I care about where you're at.
Like, in line with this book, like, when there's a prod issue, you should be calm, and because the sense of urgency with the people that are actually going to be resolving it, in line with what this book says, you should say, oh, there's a prod issue. You should work that out. And you should step back and let the sense of urgency sink into the people who actually should be jumping to resolve the issue.
I know how to resolve this. I'm going to get 15 people on a call, and we're not leaving the call until it's done.
I mean,
that sounds right.
I mean, you can do that.
What if there's a hole in your roof, and you invited all of your 15 closest friends to stand behind the roofer while he fixes it?
Are they roofers? Oh, I was going to say, are my 15
No, there's one roofer.
Oh, they're not roofers.
And there's 14 regular people.
I'm going to kick them out. So his last, well, not his last, but the last category we'll talk about is an important one for Scrum Masters, which is empower employees for broad-based action, which the subtext of what he's saying here is remove obstacles. So you can't empower employees without removing obstacles. So he breaks the organization down into saying structures, skills, systems, and supervisors. Any of these can be blockers in your organization. And if you're going to choose to go through all this stuff, you got a vision, you got a change coalition, the people to sponsor the change and to push it along, like, you can't let things in the organization block your progress towards the change. And if, again, this goes super deep. This is everything we talked about before the podcast began about Scrum Masters, which is like people on LinkedIn railing against the man or whatever, whatever they do on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
They're trying to put butts in seats or sell LinkedIn subscriptions. I don't know what I really don't know what they're trying to sell.
I wish I could monetize my LinkedIn.
Yeah, I really don't know what they're trying to sell. But the point of people on LinkedIn screaming into the void, sometimes I feel, is they're trying to say they've only been exposed to Scrum Masters inside of organizations where the Scrum Master has no ability to change the organization. There are different reasons for this, right? The first one is people not believing that they have the actual power to do things in the organization. I put Brooksy in Shawshank Redemption, where he gets out of prison and he's so institutionalized that he can't. He's like, I don't understand the outside world anymore. I don't want to be part of this. And he hangs himself or whatever. Like that's the thing. Is like, oh, well, you have, hey, random developer, you have all the ability inside of you to go like recommend change. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. You got to tell me what to do. I can do what you tell me what to do. Don't leave it up to me
Can I put a caveat at the end of that?
Yeah.
So they have the ability to recommend change, or they have the ability to do something without fear of retribution. That's the biggest key one. Is at some point along, and I don't know why, but there's a lot of at least the changes that I've been a part of.
Yeah.
The fear aspect, it's getting that out, and it often takes a person go, I know I overreacted at that one point, and it only takes one overreaction for them to remember from that point on.
The problem with that is that once they move out of that organization, they go work for another organization, like they'll still be institutionalized and be afraid to recommend things or whatever because the way
they think it's the
treated.
norm.
And that's what I'm talking about here. Is that is so ingrained in their head, the way they were treated in their other program, their other organization, their other workplace or whatever, that now they become fearful of recommending like that. That is, I don't know the word for it, tragic. I don't know the word for it. Like you're taking good people and you're basically damaging them, where now they can't give their best to other organizations once they move along, or even the same organization that they're part of, because they got pushed back by whatever blockers, basically people who are blockers, to the change in the organization, and maybe they're just caught in the middle of it. They're caught in the middle between leadership and the person who's resisting the change. It's not a fault of them, but they're getting attacked. They're doing the right thing. They're taking the brunt of the change, basically. Or and other things that can be blockers. I'm showing here: organizational structure, having component teams,
having 8 managers for your TPS reports.
Yeah, having 5 managers to yell at you and your TPS reports or not. But like this goes super deep. Like this goes deeper than that. This is like performance being tied to like, imagine if performance was tied to like velocity or something like that. You'd be like, this is the completely incorrect thing to tie performance to. How many bugs did you finish, or how many stories did you punch out, or how many cogs in the machine did you punch out at the end of the day? Like, who cares about any of this?
I mean, that's the thing that's hard is, what if you're trying to base everything off KPIs? I've actually been a part of
bad KPIs.
Bad KPIs. Yeah. And it's like, I've actually been a part of an organization where they meet once a year and they have to go and tell people, here's all this that this person has done. Yeah. And then instead of saying we had 200 people and of that we had very strong, awesome changes that he brought to the organization, but they say of those 180, we're only going to give 100, so we have to now figure out of the other 80, which of those 180 don't get it because we have 80 can't get it.
Right.
I'd be like, why not? If we had all 200 people that instructed change that was aligned with our vision.
Yeah.
Let's all have fun. Why are we restricting it to a number? Microsoft does this every year. I don't know if you know this, but they have certain organizations there that they literally look at a list, and even though everybody could be in we all hit what we had to do, they believe in forced attrition, and they take the bottom 5% and they fire them no matter what. They will walk them out the door, even though they did everything right. They hit the minimum expectations, or even they've had one year where I think the top, like the very right at the line, there was like 10 people that even got above expectations, but they had so many people that were overperforming that year that those people still got fired because they naturally think that you have to shuffle people out to get new people in to push others.
That's the Jack Welch School of Management. I don't normally name names on the podcast, but that's such an ingrained industry thing, the Jack Welch School of Management.
It's crazy.
He was known for that at GE. He was just cutting the bottom 10% of performers every year in order to get I
could see doing that if you had a performance issue greater, but if you have...
No, it's a regular thing for him.
If you have people who hit and do what they need to do, I get it. What he's trying to prevent is stagnation.
Right.
Because he thinks that bar should ever leave, just be pushing, and you do that by changing. And you do. Change brings innovation.
Yeah.
New people in, have new ideas. Totally get it. That being said, I know you're not waiting, but at some point, is your bar too low? Because you had that many people that did it. It's just crazy to me, but that's what people do. And I'm like, good Lord. How would anybody, like, if you're actually feeling empowered, what's a blocker there? The blocker there is fear.
Yeah.
That is the blocker.
Yeah.
the cultural change that you have, and you're like, no, we're not about fear anymore. That was our old us. Tell that to them, because they still remember that.
Right.
We're trying to make a change here, and they're scared to go off and critically think because the last time that they did, they got slammed. Like, think that through your head, and everyone goes, oh, and I'm like, yeah, that's why your support people, they're so timid. They've been slammed and slammed and slammed in their support roles that you're like, they're not go-getters. Well, they're not go-getters because you yell at them every time something bad happens, and you tell them they're not fixing the problem. Help them. Build a strong relationship with them. That way they're not scared of going to do that stuff because they know what you're doing. Because when you're yelling, they don't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
They hear you yelling. And you'll wonder why they don't critically think. Just like your kids.
Just like kids, yeah, that's what
exactly
I was
like kids. Sorry, but I know I know. I get a daughter, and then now I'm.
I think you're 100% spot on. Like this is it should be second nature. It should be ingrained in everyone to be like, oh yeah, of course. If you're yelling at someone, they're gonna shut down. Oh, I mean, like. Lucky for you if you're yelling at someone, they're going to shut down because you're an adult and they're a child, and there's a power differentiation. You're like, go to a bar at night and yell at another adult and see how that see how that works out.
I actually don't mind adults yelling at each other. I don't even mind adults yelling at kids, and I know I say that like, okay, please don't edit this terribly on the podcast.
Get
and then
off
it's
my
like,
lawn, kids.
No, it's an escalation issue.
Yeah.
It's a hey, I'm trying to get through to you. And then you go back and forth. Like, there are things that escalate. If the first thing you do is strike the fear of God into someone, you're done. You've lost them.
Yeah.
If you escalate to it because you're like, look, I'm trying to get things apart, and it's a natural human element. When you feel like you have no other option, then you escalate your voice.
Right.
Natural thing. I feel like I'm not being heard. Like, I'm trying to make you hear. I'm trying to talk.
Yeah.
And now I need you to listen to me.
Yeah.
And you can do that. I mean, you can, if I'm naturally talking to you like this, and I'm saying, Brian, this is how serious I am here. I can raise my voice and be nice to you. I can say, this is a very big deal. I know that you were trying hard, but good Lord, man, do you know what you've done? And, I don't be scared of losing your job, but I need you to understand the seriousness of that. We've got to understand that this can't happen again. I put it on you to come up with a better solution to find that, but this can't happen again. And just like that, I just raised my voice to you.
Yeah.
Imagine if I go straight at that, but it's you escalate to that.
Yeah.
But there's so many people that just, it's a yelling match, or it's a fear, and when you put the fear in, I would argue that you've taken a step back and you're changed, because now, even if you weren't my subject, but Billy over there heard it, he's scared.
Yeah.
Because it happened to him, and then it gets around. Then, I mean, try working in a company where word of mouth goes everywhere. Good Lord.
Is that in this?
Fear?
I mean, it's control. It's control.
Control and instruct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Persuade versus control. And inspire versus instruct. Yeah, you're right. Like, it's one of those. It's in there somewhere.
It's a power thing. It is.
Well, it's a manager. You know what I mean? A leader, if you make a mistake. Sorry, the opposite of control here, with the leader making the mistake, is persuading versus inspiring. Like, I have not inspired you to go deep enough, or I don't know, maybe try hard enough. I don't know how you want to say it, but this is the difference between leaders and managers. Like, managers are going to be pointing the finger. Like, leaders are going to say, like, I feel I have failed because I have not properly conveyed the importance of, you know what I mean? Like,
you know who you're sounding like?
What?
Obi-Wan.
Oh, no.
I have failed you, Anakin.
No.
I have failed you.
Hopefully,
right?
Hopefully his series will not be
He was a leader. He wasn't managing him. And when he sees that he's lost, what's he say? I have failed you.
Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough.
It's a good lesson.
And it's a good segue to the end of the podcast.
Oh, gosh. Why once we hit Star Wars, the podcast is over?
No, normally once we talk about finance, the podcast is over. But we went way long continuing to talk about finance. So, well, that's it for this episode.
I don't have any socials to shout out, but I appreciate anyone that wants to friend me on LinkedIn. I'd say my last name, but you wouldn't be able to find me. They'll spell it wrong. It happens all the time. You just tag me. Brian will tag it. I'll share it.
I'll tag you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.